Hey, good morning. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Andy Littleton. I'm here with my buddy Eric Siepen. We're in the loft at XO Coffee, which is the best coffee shop in Tucson. Hopefully the owner heard that. I don't know. She didn't. But it's so good, and we love it. And
best open, I don't know what this is. It's not open leaf tea because it's... I'm going to buy...
Loose leaf.
Loose leaf, thank you. I'm going to buy one of these. These are amazing, these little tea things. And this was some of the best tea I've had in my life.
Eric just had some of the best tea he had in his life.
I've had to convert to tea, so...
Man. So, well, the tea's good. We're here. Amazing. We had a fun conversation. We talked about such things as youth group, worship, our buildings, talking to pastors in public.
Our doctor.
Yeah,
that's my favorite part of the conversation.
Belly touching.
And belly touching.
So, enjoy.
Good morning. This is actually episode 38 of Faith Over Breakfast. And we're at the top of XO in a cluttered table waiting for Andy, who's... Oh, here comes his breakfast. No, that's not his breakfast. That's just the owner. No breakfast for him just yet. Anyway, I'm with Andy Littleton, pastor of Mission Church, and I'm Eric Siepen, pastor of the Village, and we're talking at each other over a mic.
Yeah, which is supposed to be natural.
And totally natural.
But yeah, it's not 100%.
But you have to do an introduction. I never introduce. I don't say, hey, Andy, I'm here today. I'm pastor of such and such.
Now I'm walking away to get
Now you're walking
sandwich.
away, and I'll just talk on the mic while he walks away. Oh, here comes the train. There's the train.
And it's a good thing Brian showed up while I was grabbing my sandwich. And
it's good to see you, Brian.
Good to see you, Brian. Thanks.
Bye, Brian.
Actually, it was a great introduction. This has been a terrible introduction because we're at a minute already, and if I'm listening to this podcast, I'm done. I'm tuning out.
Well, you say I'm not interesting on the mic. You just keep trying to put it close to me, but I talk louder than you do.
Do you?
Yes.
It doesn't seem like it in person, but I guess on the recording it actually turns out that way.
Yeah, you are a more soft-spoken person, but I have a kind of a more slurry type of speaking in a lower register, so if I don't enunciate, people look at me like, what? What did you say?
And they figure you're drinking because you have slurred speech.
Yes.
And you are drinking.
I am
what are you
drinking.
You're drinking
I'm
some
drinking tea because I'm on this extremely restricted diet due to my severe acid reflux, which is probably due to some stress and who knows what else in my life. Which I think both of us share together, and that's why we hang out. We share stress.
Seems we do. You have acid. I've had some acid reflux, which I remember seeing those commercials when I was a kid, and now I'm like, maybe I should look into some of those.
Oh
meds.
Goodness, yeah.
Yeah, I'm missing a patch of hair. That's a bit of a mystery at the moment, so that's a little bit.
And we have the same doctor.
We do.
We have Dr. Maxwell. And I've been like, I had some really bad acid reflux over the last few weeks, and I thought, like, do I need to just hardcore, like, restrict my diet? I'm almost completely off coffee now.
Really?
So I drink decaf coffee. I have one small espresso in the morning, and that's it. And so I'm kind of debating, do I need to call him now, or should I let this restricted diet go for a couple weeks and see if I can calm everything down? And I mean, I've been dealing with it with him, and it was getting better, and then I had this horrible flare-up, and so anyway, I used to not like doctors. I love Dr. Maxwell, but I still don't like going. It's an appointment. The man is too familiar with my belly. Like, I have to lay down. He pushes on it. He says, do you feel anything here? Do you feel anything there? Like, I don't know. Like, that's just not the relationship I want.
Let's get real personal for a second. Do you? I don't even like when my wife touches my belly.
I like that. But I'll tell you, here's the thing: is that when you go to the doctor, and there are places where you've got to, the doctor's got to touch and see intimate parts of you, and then he happens to be a follower of Jesus, and you go and you show up at a church event, and there you are standing next to one of the few men who've touched your, lots of parts of your body gently, and you're like, this is not right. This is
I can't worship Jesus with you.
I can't stand
You need
it.
to leave. No, he's a great
I
doctor.
love Dr. Maxwell.
Yeah.
Shout out for him. He's not probably seeing new patients, so he doesn't need us to shout
sorry.
out for him. But
No, I think you're right.
he's
I
a
think
busy
not.
man. But anyway.
Anyway, you were late last week. I was late this week. My dog barfed on the carpet, right when I'm leaving. Thanks a lot, dog.
Thanks, dog.
Man. And I've got 2 dogs, those people that know me. And I have a love-hate relationship with the 2 dogs. I love one.
You hate the other.
I don't hate the other. It kind of bugs me sometimes. And it was he who threw up. So that's Chandler. And he's the sweetest dog ever. Really he is.
Did you name him after Matt Chandler?
No.
Okay.
I named him after the town where we picked him up from the rescue.
Oh, that's
Chandler,
creative.
Arizona.
That's
Yeah.
creative.
So he's a little rescue dog. Actually, he's the sweetest thing. He's so excited to see you. And that's what bothers me. I'm like, go away. He's always licking me, always like, and I'm just like, I want some space. So today he comes in, he's all jazzed, and he just whoop, barfs on the carpet right before I was leaving. Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect. Anyway, so I'm here.
Yeah, you're here.
We're 5 minutes deep in a podcast. What are we talking about? You sent me some topics.
I sent you some topics. You sent me some topics.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just thinking recently about youth groups and the role of small churches and large churches and, things that nobody who's listening to this podcast is probably really interested in. But I'm interested in them. And one of the things that I say often that's relatively controversial, even in my own church, I believe, is that I think youth groups are a waste of time.
Okay.
And
I'm not super for youth groups either, but waste of time.
Because,
Describe.
statistically, they are not helpful.
Yeah. They lead people, once they leave your church and your youth group, they come to churches like ours. They don't go back to your church.
Right. That's very true, or they don't go to church at all.
Or at all. Usually, actually, that's even more common. Yeah.
And the retention rates of young people in church are much higher in multi-generational churches.
Absolutely.
Especially ones that are multi-generational focused. So they're not youth-focused churches. They tend to be focused on the whole community. That there's a lot of integration, so you end up with more mothers and more fathers. You got more places to talk. You tend to feel like you belong there more. You're not as worried about going to church to find friends and have fun. It becomes more about being part of something.
Right.
And
because if you're going to church to have friends, you're going to go over to youth group. Excuse me, my Whiskey Town sandwich is really good.
It is.
I don't want to stop eating it to talk right now. So
no, that's okay. I
bear
feel
with me.
very monologue-y, so that's fine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't remember what I was going to say.
Well, you were going to say if you're going to church
Oh.
to see your friends at the youth group or whatever.
Well, you could go to this great church, but you have to go over in a room with some churches 3 people, and other churches 50, 100 people.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with the church. It isn't the church. It is a different church.
Right.
In all intents and purposes, I ran one of these, okay? So I'm speaking as someone
At a
who...
relatively large church.
At a relatively large church, and functionally, I look back on it, and that was a separate church, and I was a very unqualified pastor, and I had no elders. That's what it was. And we were dealing with people we weren't that much older than, truthfully,
Right.
and who we were pretty ill-equipped to serve. The people who would have been really well-equipped to serve them would have been their grandparents.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they couldn't, it wasn't about the church. It was about our little church, and if they didn't like that, then they didn't like the whole thing.
Right.
And if there's one person there they didn't get along with, or didn't know anybody because they didn't go to their school, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very dangerous to put a lot of people together who know nothing about life and ask them to do church together in a room eating baby food and shoving marshmallows in their mouth and playing, but I'm not against.
I didn't do any of that.
Those games and stuff.
As you probably caught from our last podcast, I'm like, I don't want to do the things that everybody's been doing. So,
I went on a lot of high school, you call them camps and conferences and all those kinds of things. And, I remember the guy who took me and a couple guys hiking and camping and spent time talking to us that had nothing to do actually with the youth group. It was just a guy who cared about some young guys and wanted to invest in them. That means a heck of a lot more, I think. It's the same thing. It's like, I believe in youth sports, but I don't believe in youth sports the way we do youth sports now.
Right.
Because I guarantee you it's much more meaningful for you to take your son out and play football with him for 1 to 2 hours a week.
Yep.
Than it is for you to send him to a football team to play, or a soccer team to play 2 to 3 hours a week plus Saturdays. Now, being on teams is good, learning to cooperate is good, that experience is good, but when you're talking about most of them not going to make college teams, and then if they do make college teams, only 1% of them are going to be professional. It's like, it's not a career path.
Yeah, and it usually, I haven't heard it cast as a career path. Some of these folks would be like, yeah, it's potential, but it's more like this is going to be like the thing that teaches them to be a full person.
Yes.
Right? Like they must be on a team and they must do these things. And I'm sure there's some of that. I'm sure there's some of that.
Those things are all good.
Yeah.
But I think I guess for me, like youth sports I just read an article. No, I'm just going off today, but I just read an article talking about how youth referees are quitting like all over the country because the parents have become so horrible.
Dude, yeah, no kidding. A guy I work with, no, I won't. Might say maybe, but a guy I work with regularly. Yeah, forget it.
Yeah,
is a new youth referee, and in just a short period of time has just had tons. From what I can gather, just a couple conversations, I'm like, this is a big issue. Like the parents are horrific.
They are.
And he's like, it's unbelievable. Like the kids are fine. It is the parents. And so then, are we going to double back? As I'm saying this, I'm like, get these kids away from these parents and put them in youth group. No. I'm just kidding. Right. But it's like, clearly we're, so here would be my thing. I think we need to disciple families. And families need to because it's never just the kid and their problem. Like when I was in youth group, I connected with some people there, and that was great, and it's fine. And when I had kids in youth group, I think there were some real moments, good times.
Right.
But I think all that could have happened in the context of a church that was multi-generational. But the truth is that most of the trouble and most of the confusion wasn't just this kid alone. It was this kid in the context of his family or some form of community.
Right.
And so then, what was happening is we're trying to, talk to a kid isolated from their parents. So I tried when I was there to make a big push that, if we had a small group of kids, that small group leader really worked in concert with their parents and spent a lot of time with their parents and got to know their parents, right. And that they became just my hope at the end of my stint there was that we came alongside families and helped them instead of kind of creating a church for their kids.
Right.
And if somehow that happened in a church really meaningfully, I'd be grateful for it. You think I'm talking too loud?
Yeah, I can tell you. Look, watch when I go on there like that.
And then I'm down here.
Yeah, you're really quiet.
But when I laugh, it's loud.
Yeah, you got a loud laugh.
Yeah, sort of weird one. It's unnerving to listen to yourself. I listened to our last podcast on the way over. I kind of hate it.
You hate our podcast? I love our podcast.
No, I love our podcast. I hate hearing myself.
You know what helps? Just put it on 1.5 speed, and then it helps much.
Just throws it off a little bit. I like that. Yeah, my one idea was talking to pastors in public.
Are you changing the subject already? You don't like my subject?
No.
Talking to pastors in public.
It just dawned on me that's what we're doing right now.
We're talking to pastors in public.
I'm talking to you in public, and you're talking to me.
Instead of the, pastors in cars, whatever we were going to do, talking to pastors in public. We
Talking
could just
to
take a
pastors in
mic
public.
and go into different coffee shops and plop it down to people we don't know and say, "Hey, like we're pastors. You want to talk to us or on a podcast?"
We could do that. We could do that. Oh man, yeah. We can come back to that, but here is why I.
You're like, that idea is going away.
Yeah,
we're throwing that in the garbage.
Let's delete that. No, I had an encounter with the pastor where it got the talk became very churchy, and I was extremely uncomfortable. And then I thought, oh my gosh, what's it like to talk to like for people? Like, I get the rules, I can talk in all that lingo if I would need to. I can act really spiritual. If I really need to, I could do that.
Yes.
And when somebody else is doing it, it's not surprising.
So can you like clarify for me like what kind of lingo was being tossed around, just so that like I know what was?
Yeah. So there was a lot of the word blessed was coming out a lot.
Brother coming out a lot.
Brother was coming out a lot. References, a lot of references to the Lord.
The Lord.
The Lord just really laid on my heart today.
Gotcha.
Things of that nature. And I've been to like pastors' events, and I remember our Jimmy, who we both knew, he and I were once standing at a pastor's event, and he looked at me and he said, "These people are really uncomfortable and weird." And I was like, I'm feeling the same exact way. Like, this is a room full of pastors, and it's just like, these people are insane. Like, if I'm just walking in off the street, I'm like, what is this? Like, this is not normal. Anyway, so I don't know. I just reflected on that, and I was like, and then I thought, is that what it's like to talk to me?
And most of the time. I mean, all the lords that you use, and especially when you start prophesying and get uncomfortable.
Yeah. See, even the fact that you're saying that, nobody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, nobody does. I'm thinking our 57 listeners.
They're that insider group.
Yeah, they are. I mean, most of them are in Tucson. So.
Do you think, man, do you think if you started talking that way at your church, I don't think it would go over well.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
They would laugh at me because they know it's not me. They'd
be like, you're kidding around.
But we all have, but I say things in the village lingo, and the village lingo is just as weird. So I can people who've come to our church are like, so, like, what are you talking about when you say like your heart? All right,
yeah.
Which I don't say, but my whole church does. I tend to try to talk about people's souls because I just don't like the heart thing. But that's one. Or the one that everybody hates is you're gonna need to sit in it.
Okay.
What the heck does that mean? People want to know.
So I was I've been having hard times. So at our elders meeting last night, I was trying to be kind of honest about. Well, I was back and forth, and I was But one of the guys said, "What would it be like to just sit in that for a while?"
Oh yeah.
Right, and I'm like, I know what you mean. I know because the communities that we're in say that.
Yeah.
And he was referring to a potential 33-hour train ride I'm wanting to take.
Yeah.
And he was like, what if you did nothing and you just sat in it for a while during the train ride? And I was like, 34 hours of sit in it? Like, what does that mean? Like,
well, we should unpack it.
Okay, let's
unpack it. I mean, I don't know.
When your crazy church community says sit in it, Eric.
Yes.
Because your community actually probably influenced what this guy said.
Oh, yeah.
Truth be told.
Yeah, truth be told. And it was influenced by other people.
Can you define for me what on my 34-hour train ride exactly I would be doing when I'm sitting in it? What it sounds like to me is that somebody pooped on the seat, and I gotta sit in it. And I just gotta sit there
and sit
there. And
here's what I would say is that all of us run away from our feeling internally, right? The experience that you're feeling,
right?
Whatever that is, anger, fear, anxiety, and we want to figure out how to medicate it. And so then we don't hear God. So sitting in it is saying, I'm going to willfully choose to not go after my typical ways of medicating this so that maybe I can hear the voice of God.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
But that's so long. So sit in it just as...
That was my reaction was, actually my hope for that train ride is to kind of like explore and open like those
well, that would be
doors of feel. I know, yeah, I know, I do know, but the suggestion there had to do with like not because I was framing that around like wanting to like specifically like write things out and maybe like compile that. It's something I've been thinking about, like compiling my thoughts about my dad, which is a thought I had actually a while before he died that I wanted to do,
right?
Which is interesting. So then he was trying to guard me and suggest that I shouldn't just work if I go do this.
Yeah,
so
fair.
So sit in it. But then I was like, in my mind in that moment, I was like, so I can't like write anything. I'm just gonna sit for 34 hours and just like. It's just like I can't do that.
I would suggest you do that for at least an hour.
Oh, please! I'd love an hour
to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
it's good.
No, I know. Yeah,
but no,
it was funny. And the funniest thing though was that the phrase
to sit in it. Right.
Sit in it.
Yes, it's not something that people say. It's like Mission Village, Crabbian.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Crabbian, referring to a doctor. I just thought. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, it must be weird. I wonder how weird it is to interact with this, and I wonder how much of this seeps into our conversations with people outside of our community, and we don't know. We don't realize it.
Yeah, I think it does.
It has to.
It has to.
I mean, because this person I interacted with a while back, like they didn't mean to. I don't think they meant to slip into just like Christian talk.
Right.
I think they knew I was a Christian, and they just were like, oh, the Lord really laid this on my heart the other day. It was like a lot of strange words.
Yes, we have a lot of lingo for it.
Yeah.
Well, the Christian culture in modern day is well developed.
Uh-huh.
And, from the way we talk within our books and our music and our preaching, like it's all sort of built into it. So once you enter in and you figure it out, you just sort of slip into the whole process.
Yeah, and I know it's when you hang out with medical folks or military folks, the same thing happens, right? I know it's not,
but they don't have the mission to go and really to convert people, to bring people into the kingdom of God.
Yeah, their goal isn't to go relate to those outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way that they can understand the gospel. So they don't have to think about, like, how do we make our medical lingo more, street, unless they're actually trying to do some kind of, medical outreach and give people education on what they need to do. So.
And then when we try to make it more street as Christians, I think we've often done a terrible job. Have you ever read The Word on the Street, the paraphrase, the Bible paraphrase?
Oh my gosh, no.
It's horrible.
Is it bad?
Oh my gosh. Because the trouble is the street lingo varies wherever you are, and it's always changing. And then when you try to take an ancient text and
make it modern,
it's just so it'd be like, I don't know. Jesus came up to the homeboys and was like, "Yo, cats, where are we gonna be at?" And they were like, "Dag, yo." It was just laughable to me. I mean,
it's probably not the best.
No, it's not on the shelves anymore. It didn't work out. No. The publisher dropped it.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, segueing back to your topics, which were really good, and youth group, because that's one of those. There's so many of these things that we do because they're done. I mean, this even harkens back to our egg hunt conversation.
Yes.
So right now, you start a church, and people will walk in the door and say, "Where's the youth group?"
Yes.
Right.
Especially if they're followers of Jesus.
If they're followers,
or have that culture,
or I mean, I would say a lot of not followers of Jesus who want a church experience, especially would be like, I want my kid in a youth group.
Yeah.
Like, I was in a youth group. I think kids should be in youth groups.
Yeah.
Whatever. So, can we break down really quick, just where's this coming from? Is this when Jesus rose from the dead? Did he send the Spirit who then ordained the youth group, or how did this happen? How did we get here?
Well, I think we got here through the modern day Sunday school movement.
Yes.
Which was a good thing, and then because it was an educational thing. It was teaching people to read.
It was an outreach. There was a need in the community.
Right.
There were a lot of kids who didn't have tools for life.
Yeah. And it was in some ways both a way of teaching people about God and educating them so they can read and write and things like that.
I would parallel it to Bible translation that happens in tribal communities where you're doing two things. You're teaching, you're helping that community build texts for themselves and write their language so that they can share it. You're teaching them to write and read, and then you're using the Bible, which is something that you believe would be life-changing for them to know, as one of their textbooks, right? Like that sort of idea, like it had an educational and evangelistic element at that time. Yeah.
I think we moved into a goods and services version of church in the mid-70s and the early 80s. And so even my parents took us, let's be really honest, to E-Free in 1986, which is now the Journey.
Yeah.
And the reason we went there was that Steve Tracy, who's now a relatively famous person, was the youth leader there.
Yeah.
And so they had what was known in the community in Tucson, the best youth group.
Yeah.
So we went there, but my parents didn't actually like the church that much, and they didn't really like the main pastor as a expositor, because that was another very important thing at the time. But because of the youth group, they did it for us. So we stayed there for 4 years because of the youth group.
I've seen that over and over. The family goes for the youth group. Then when the youth group days are over, they didn't actually like the church or connect to it that much, so they take off.
They took off.
Yeah.
So a year later, my sophomore year of college, I go back to the Journey, and I start a college ministry with 4 people.
Yeah.
And that grows into about 15, 20 people. And then all of a sudden, over like a 6-month period, it triples in size. And people come on Sunday mornings and then our college, midweek thing, whenever that was. And they started saying, I'm like, why? How did you hear about us? Because we're not doing any advertising. We're just praying, studying the Bible. It's pretty straightforward. We've heard this is the best youth group, college ministry in town. And so they started coming because of that reason.
I once heard that about the middle school group, was like, we heard this is the best middle school group, and that family did not stick around.
Right, but when you didn't meet and we didn't, in fact, to be the best, college ministry in town, one of our leaders ended up sleeping with somebody, and the whole ministry fell apart within a year and a half, partly because, you had 19, 20-year-olds running the entire show, which is not a great idea. But no real oversight. It was just like, this is successful and you're bringing people. Great. Good job.
Right.
We had no mentoring really, nothing. So, there's a shopping that happens. And it's a shopping based on services and like what you're going to get for your kid and.
And as if the best thing for your kid is that you go out and give them the best experiences ever. Right. Which, think about that. Is that life? Is that, like, if your goal is to prepare this kid for life, are they just going to always get to go where they have the best experiences ever?
Right.
Are they going to have, get married and always have the best spouse ever at all times, and if they don't, they should leave that person and go find somebody else? Are they always going to have the best job ever, and when it's not the best, they should leave it and go somewhere else? The best community ever, and every time it's broken, just leave it and go move somewhere else. You see a lot of that.
Yeah.
Is that the good side of our culture? Is that what we want to promote? Or are we just kind of a part of the machine when we do that, right?
Yeah, no, I think, and for me, growing up, I grew up in small church until we hit E-Free. And those were my favorite memories as a kid. And some of them are me being absolutely bored to death in church with, 25 other people listening to the guy preach. And you're like, oh my gosh. But you're like 10.
Yeah.
And, you don't understand half the things being said, and your attention span doesn't work that well. And then you go off to Sunday school, and there are 4 of you. But somehow that, changed me.
Yeah.
Like that's what really impacted me and made me love church as much as as where I found Jesus.
Yeah, I have a varied like small church and big church experience from when I was a kid. I have a feeling Brian's about to tell us something about his church experience. Can't really hear what he's saying though. All I can hear is the train.
Yeah, that's all I hear.
It doesn't matter.
All
okay,
right.
well,
thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. So yeah, I kind of varied large church, small church. Interestingly, from the big church that had the big kick-in youth group, I remember two things. I remember a sermon by the pastor when I skipped youth group and went with my parents.
Right.
And it was actually really good. And I remember a piece of it. And I remember this, when I went into youth group, I had to be a middle schooler. This was like some high school girl who came over and just like was like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's your name? And she was really nice. And I just remember thinking, she's so awesome. All right, that's all I remember. That.
Wow. Yeah,
that's it.
Those are good memories.
Yeah. But, okay, that's all I got. Which is that kind of stuff like, I think there is a role for like younger college, high school students in the lives of younger kids. Because I remember I went to a camp and this he's probably like a freshman or sophomore in college guy just kind of took me under his wing and was like, hey, you want to come play volleyball with us? And I was a kid and I was just like, he's so awesome, you know? And I loved that and it meant a lot to me. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
I just don't think that guy should have been my pastor.
Yeah. Well, one of so there's a number of young men and women in our churches, but in my church, there's this one particular young woman who intentionally will, during Sunday, you know, we eat afterwards, she will plop down next to the 10 to 12-year-olds, one of them, and just sit and talk to them for like a half hour.
Beautiful.
Well, you know, after like a couple of months, the reports from the parents are, these kids are like, I sat with this, you know, and I'm not going to say her name, but she probably, if she listens, she knows who she is.
You know who you are.
And, you know, they're just blown away by it. And they just love, like, oh my gosh, this, you know, and she's, you know, cute girl, and she's, you know, bubbly, and it's just something that really, that she has a heart for God, and they just eat it up. They love it. They love sitting and talking to her, and that's not a program. No, that's not. That's her being encouraged in that and intentionally going and doing it, and that's powerful.
Absolutely.
That's life transformative. Those kids are going to stand up someday and say, well, there was this, you know, 20-something kid who just sat next to me and talked to me about life and God, and that changed my life. Yeah. You know, and that's what gets me excited. That's, you know, and there is a dark side. I mean, I love small churches. 75% of the churches in the U.S. are under 100, and 90% are under 100 in the world. So the small church is where things happen, but there is a dark side to the small church. You know,
oh, sure.
They're made up of families. Yeah. Like, and so one family has a fight, well, then your whole family is having, like, the whole church is having a fight, right?
Yeah, the church is deeply impacted by what's happening with two to five people or something.
Or, you know, or one family offends another family.
Or one family has too much power in the church.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah, these things happen. And so, I mean, it's not that small churches are all healthy. In fact, they're not. But
no church is all healthy.
Right. You just kind of, some of it you'll feel differently in a small church than you will in a big church. Because if a big family leaves your 3,000-person church, nobody cares that 20 people left your church. Right. But if you get a church of 100 and 20 people leave,
you're devastated.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, on so many levels, from income to, you know,
just the
relationship,
how it feels at church with them all gone.
Yes,
the void.
People feel like they feel uncomfortable when they run into each other. You know,
at Sweet Tomatoes.
At Sweet Tomatoes. You just picked
arbitrary.
Yeah, talking. That's a really uncomfortable moment with talking to the pastor when you've left his church and you run into him at Sweet Tomatoes. There's the uncomfortable.
Oh man, it is.
I've had a few of those moments. Not at Sweet Tomatoes, thankfully.
Yeah, no, I've had them, and I've been with other pastors as they had them, and just been like a third party watching that, and like,
it's so rough. It really is.
It stinks. Yeah, for everybody.
It does. It is hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, I mean, yeah, like you were saying, the youth groups came from Sunday school, and then there were these big, like, especially like inner city programs like YMCA and Youth for Christ and Young Life that came up that were especially reaching like areas where impoverished areas or areas where the parents had to work like a lot and the kids didn't have anywhere to go. And so these were like outreach ministries that I still think like they were really trying to address a real issue that was there and do a good job with it. And then I feel like the model for those things, like, they have changed. I wouldn't say they haven't changed, but kind of what they tried to do is then just grow and grow and say, let's take this model and apply it everywhere.
Yeah.
So let's we got to bring in kids in every community in the same way. And so it seems like the better questions would be like in our community, just like in general, like who's here and how should we engage with them, right? Instead of just like taking the model that worked in Chicago in the 70s and applying it to, Tucson suburbs now. Right.
Instead of having to stand, I mean, I think like, so if you plant a church down, let's just say somewhere where you end up with a large collection of single moms who have multiple kids and they're coming to your church, then a youth group with a lot of young men, and women who are going to offer mentorship in that is a good idea.
Right.
Like, because you're meeting a need that's missing.
You're coming alongside these moms.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas, maybe you're in a different place where the kids you're competing with youth soccer to get people to youth group. Maybe you need a different approach. Maybe we don't need a youth group at this church. Maybe we need a different kind of approach. Maybe we need more family-oriented
That's like the church I came from where I did youth group. They had their own like Christian schools in which they held worship services in the middle of the week, which to me is still an odd thing. And so there was like the vast majority of the kids all went to this Christian school together, all did, and they had events and they had
they were a youth group.
Mission trips as a school. And then they had, as attached to their school, like complex sports programs in which, most days after school they would all get together and the parents were deeply involved in attempting to like make that this rich community experience. And then we were supposed to then at church also have this amazing built-out youth group. And a lot of these kids were, I remember one kid was just like, I hate that school is church and I hate that everything is, it's like constant. Like, can I just do something that's not like somehow attempting to be church?
Yeah.
And I remember like hearing that and just being like, gosh, I want that for you. Like, I want you to just be able to go like do something with your friends,
Well, and I think one of the things that my kids have experienced out in the world, because we purposely didn't put them in the Christian schools and things like that, and
Can you explain the term "out in the world" to?
Well, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No, you can, in the sense that when you're in a place that's not like you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's not an insular culture.
Yeah. Has
different belief systems. There's a plurality of belief systems.
Yes, good. There you go.
When you step out with going to a public school.
Yeah.
So our church, for instance, once a month has a game night.
Yeah.
There's no gospel preach. Yeah. We all just get together and play games, and we encourage people to invite their friends. My son invites a lot of his friends.
Yeah.
He managed to get 2 of his friends to come, and they love to come. But their first thing was, a lot of his friends say no because it's at a church and they think that there's some kind of... There's a
bait and switch
going on.
Which I understand why they feel that way, because that happens a lot.
That happens a lot.
And I hate that.
And so even his 2 friends were like, we'll try it this one time, but it's at a church. They're suspicious of the bait and switch. And when they get there and they come to our church and it's like a big house, and they're like, okay, they're sort of a relax, and they just play and they go home and they meet some nice people. And it's a good way to connect with people. But that's more and more my experience, is that people think that the church is a bait and switch. Like, why would they offer anything good without trying to get you to be part of what they're doing?
Yeah.
And so we've become so much that we're not just part of the story anymore.
Yeah.
And so we're completely full on conversion, and not about people just actually enjoying something rich. And we're all gospel people, so the gospel will come out.
Yeah.
But it just takes a lot more time, because I certainly don't stand up at the end of game night and say, now is your time to make a decision.
Right. Right. Yeah, which at some point in those youth group days when I was running a little church, I remember feeling like the assumption was every one of these events was going to be some kind of bait and switch, and I was just like, it's just not right. I hated when I got invited to a punk rock show when I was a kid, and I went, and it turned out that the leader of the punk rock band was going to give a sermon, actually. And now looking back on it, I'm not sure he wanted to give one. I think the church was like, you can come and we'll pay you, but this is what you have to do.
Right.
Because some of them weren't that into it. Some were. But I remember just being like, I thought I was going to like a good punk rock show, but they did like 3 songs, and now I'm at church, and
right.
like this feels weird.
Right, it's just punk rock worship, and then you have a sermon and more punk rock worship.
Right. And I just wanted to mosh.
Right.
And so like
Christian moshing. That's
Christian moshing, which it was. You had to be a little less violent. Well, a little less overtly violent. I would throw elbows.
I've been to Rocket Town. In Nashville.
Yeah.
To a thrash metal. And you probably know this better than I do. There's a particular band that all covers their face with bandanas.
Okay.
I don't know this band. It's actually a relatively popular band. So they get up there. We were just in Nashville and like Rocket Town. I mean, come on, Michael W. Smith sings about it. This is his club. So we get in there. It's way down the basement. It's like the ceilings are super low. Like, so I can reach up and touch the ceiling.
Yeah.
There's all these youth dressed in black, and the band comes out, and all of a sudden, it's literally the whole audience pulls up these red bandanas, and one of the most violent, like, moshing thing starts happening, and I think my kids, my son is like 6 years old, we're down there, like, got the ball pressed up against the wall. We're like, we gotta get out of here. This is crazy.
See, I would take my kid when I had the youth group. Like, if kids wanted to go to concerts, I would offer to take them no matter what concert it was, because I thought, like, if I'm going to be their friend and like a mentor as a believer, and they really want to go to KFMA Day, which was
horrible day. No, it's a good day.
But I was like, I'd rather go with them.
Well, it's not a great day for a middle schooler probably to go to, but yeah.
I actually took middle schoolers to KFMA Day, and because I talked to
you're kind of the rebel.
Well, here's what I did though. I talked to their parents, and their parents were like, "Well, they really like these bands, and I'd like them to go, but I'm nervous about them going by themselves, and they don't want me to go because
right, because they're not,
because and." I would love if you'd go with them and help them like think about that and navigate that and just be with them. Actually, some of those were great. I remember taking some guys just down. It was like downtown Phoenix, some like heavy metal band at a club. It was an all ages show, and I took them, and like we had, I thought, an incredible like conversation and just great time in the car, and like, navigating life together,
right.
And like the youth group wasn't the key to that. That could have easily happened just in a church context. And
right.
Like some younger kid is like, I really want to go see this band, and the parents are like, well, like I don't want to. I want them to be able to like go see a band, I don't. And then 25-year-old Joe is like, yeah, I'm kind of into that stuff. Like, I'd love to take them. And that's awesome. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
like, that should happen.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah. And that comes out of relationships and context. You don't just create that program.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's true.
Yeah.
You're right on, my friend.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I like listening to you. Which, speaking of small churches, we'll make a transition. This was your second Sunday in the big house.
The big house.
And I just thought a funny thing happened to me last week. I got in the mail from a realtor a church for sale. For $500,000. It just happens to be the church that we started in.
What?
Beth Shar Shalom on Rosemont and 4th. Or Rosemont. Is it 3rd now? Yeah, I think it's 3rd. Yeah.
I've seen that one.
We started there.
Wow.
That's where I worked before. I worked at a church called New Covenant.
Yeah.
That shared that church with Beth Shar.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, like,
if
it's all remodeled and everything, ready to go.
If we'd seen that mailer, we probably would have checked that. Except we couldn't have afforded $500,000.
Yeah, no. So anyway, how was the service?
Yeah, we're figuring things out. This was our first one with a meal. We got all these amazing, like a church in Phoenix that has just really been generous to us. Gave us tons of chairs and tables, like more
awesome.
than we could have ever afforded. And so we're like swimming in chairs and tables now all of a sudden. And like, what do we do? How do we do this? So like setting up our meal was confusing. Where it's like, oh shoot, what do we do? And but we figured it out. And there's just a lot of like, I feel like it's one thing I really like is the building feels a lot like the place we fixed up before where we were renting.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel drastic, but it does feel different and good, and like we kind of have a little more room. But there's a lot to talk about. Like I brought up at our elders meeting, I think we need to like replant our church in a way, because we moved and we've got some different things, and the people are different than they were a year ago. Not drastically, but a lot of people like came and checked us out, and quit coming. Some people moved away, some new people have come, and I think we need to think about how, because we kind of just moved everything over to this building sort of the way it was.
Right.
And I think we got to work through like, how are we going to do this? What's it going to feel like in this place? So there's a lot to do with that. But it's going well, and I think people are really proud of it and excited, and there's still a lot to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we moved, but there's still
a lot.
Yeah.
No, it's going to take a year. It's like moving into your house. Like, there's always that room where you shove everything in, you're like, yeah, we'll deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't deal with it for 7 years. And I think we still have some bits of that at our church.
It's been 5 years in our home, my wife and I's home, and that room, we've had it cleaned out, and then more stuff goes back in it, because we're still, it's like the guest room that we're always like, throw it in there.
Yeah.
And we have a portion of the new building is that way right now.
Right, because you guys are still having to build out for kids and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah, we have one
some space.
Kids room, but it's even just not like ready,
right.
I would say. And then we've got another one that we plan to use, but it's not. There's 2 rooms that we just didn't even try to finish. They're just full of stuff and just not finished.
Right.
Yeah. But no, but all that said, it's been good.
So, did you preach this week, or
Nick?
Have you preached in this building yet?
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you haven't gotten to preach in the building?
No.
Oh, that'll be exciting. Your first Sunday in the building.
Yeah. Nick crushed it though. Probably one of my favorite sermons he's ever done. So it was fun. Good. And it was just a nice week. Actually, our good friends who led worship most of the time before the merger led worship, and it's been a while since they've done that. And that was kind of cool for, at least for my wife and I. We really enjoyed that. And it was fun. So it was good.
Do you think that's going to be more like? Are you guys going to have more varied worship, or is that?
I think we all want it. Some of our other leaders that haven't led as much lately have had like these folks have.
They have a baby.
A couple little kids.
Yeah.
One real small, who's getting a little older now, and the other couple who's involved just had a baby, and so it's like sometimes it's just a little crazy.
Right.
Yeah. But that's. I think we all want varied.
Yeah.
worship.
No, I think that lends itself to the more complex community. Is that when you have more voices up front speaking, when you have more voices and styles of ways of leading people into the throne room of God through music is. It's tasty that way.
Yeah.
It's good.
But I'm curious to see how we can lay this place out. The one thing I was feeling is like it doesn't feel comfortable yet. Like we put in chairs. Actually, the chairs are way more technically comfortable than the ones we used to have. But it feels a little just like room of chairs to me. Like I want it to feel more like a home in a way. I'm trying to think through how to do that. But we'll figure it out. Yeah, it's good.
Cool.
Are you going to buy that building you started in and just move your whole church?
Well, it's funny. Churches take forever to sell in Tucson. So
they are, because there's not just a bajillion churches looking for buildings here.
Right, and the churches like us who are growing but are still small, don't have $500,000 to spend, and no banks. I mean, the bank will loan it to you, but it's a nightmare to get a loan from a bank as a church. But I really do have this. I don't believe you're gonna. I'll put this out. I don't believe in church planning anymore.
Really?
I think that church planning has become a god for and the way we're going to save things.
It's
I believe
interesting.
in. I believe in maybe a little bit more older model of like parish style.
Yeah.
And that plant like that. You know, in the Catholic Church, a monk would go out and he would plant. They put the parish together or
Right.
a monastery, and then they would do one.
Yeah.
A donkey's ride away, a day away, like not like a long. And so you have them.
But they were aimed at communities.
Yes, and clustered closer together
Yeah.
instead of like we're going to send you way out there. No, we're all actually together, and we're sort of building this sort of wall of. So I kind of believe in a more that kind of church planting, I guess.
I'm with you actually on that. Yeah, it's just the big idea of like we're going to send a team to this
Right.
to this. Usually it's like we're going to send a team to this really unchurched area, but usually it's like really cool area. Is
Yeah.
also what you're trying to say.
Yeah, and instead of just sort of like, okay,
Yeah.
this community is, if you imagine, like I always imagine like cell towers, or, you know, little like hot spots. So if one church is a hot spot, it covers a certain amount of space, and then you have to plant another one right on the edge of that so that it can repeat it, and then you continue instead of trying to plant one way over here.
Which I'm sure doesn't, and I've heard this, like I remember there's a church on the northwest side that tried to plant one way out in Vale, which is on the other side of our city, and it didn't work, and you know, and you think about it, it's like, yeah, none of those people are in contact with each other so far away,
Right.
and like the sending church doesn't get Vale. Like the
Right.
northwest side of town is like, yeah, it's suburban and growing, but Vale, you still got people with like horses, and so it's different.
Yeah.
And their thought was just, it's growing out there.
Yeah.
Send somebody out there.
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't the best to go out there.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good. I'm with you. I'd like to explore that more.
Yeah, so anyway, I see that's probably right on the edge. It's still within kind of the circles of where we have people in our community, and it's right. It would help expand us that way. So I'm like, oh God,
Who knows?
you can do it. That would be a fun place. It's already set up. You know, we could paint,
Fourth
and throw
and
some
Rosemont.
couches in there, and you could.
That's my neighborhood.
Yeah, it's your neighborhood.
Yeah.
You can have your own neighborhood church.
We actually have like sort of taken over our street.
Yeah, no.
On accident, just because people have just moved next
Moved
to it.
in.
It actually sort of makes a lot of sense, but not because we just moved.
You just
in.
moved in. Because I'm trying to think. So you guys are on Craycroft and
basically third.
Third. So it's like just straight that way. Yeah.
Interesting.
And it just popped up too. So anyway,
Weird. Crazy.
when we know what we can do is what it will be is the first union church between Mission Church and the Village, and
we do a combo
church and that one.
Eric, that's not a bad idea.
That is actually a brilliant idea. Let's do it. Let's just do that.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Well,
I mean, you're in charge of everything. I'm in charge of everything.
Yeah, right.
Nobody's going to go. I actually think people would be thinking that is interesting down the road. I mean, I think that might be
right. Something like that could make some sense.
It could make some sense.
Huh? Who knows?
Because we both bring similar but different skill sets as communities.
Well, and the truth is, the other church shouldn't be the Village or Mission. It should be a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'd have to combine the names.
Millage.
The millage. Where you go? I go to the village. What's that?
Are they milling stuff? Yeah. Milling. Always milling. Yeah, that's all I got, Eric.
Yeah, I'm like, well, goodbye.
Goodbye.